Welcome, everybody, to Space Force. I am your host, Jason Tondro.
I'm Jim.
I'm Stuart Smith.
I'm the evil clone of Professor Christopher McLaughlin.
Oh, no. My goatee.
Now, before we get into we've got a big, important show today. It is the last film in the Prime universe. We have gone through all 6 of the original cast Star Trek films, and now we're on the last film of the Next Generation, Star Trek Nemesis. But before we get to it, Chris, this is the last chance this month for people to take your charity bundle, right?
Yes. If you go to the popular Facebook thing that all the kids are on these days, and look up my personal publishing imprint, Ghost Show Press, and check out our most recent post, you will see 2 links. You will see one where you can buy a copy of our first awesome supplement, World Defenders the Summit, which works for basically every superhero game ever invented.
Yep.
And if you buy it, all the money that I make off of it will be going to the Elton John's AIDS Foundation in honor of Pride Month. And if you would rather just not deal with my scribblings and ramblings, there's also a donate link where you can just donate directly to the charity. Either one would be great, and would be a great way of I would certainly appreciate it. Just my way of saying thank you to a wonderful community that I'm very, very, very blessed to have many friends, families, and fans in. So, and for those of you that have already made a purchase or a donation, thank you very much for helping us out. We greatly appreciate it.
And at the end of this month, you're donating literally every penny you've made from this product to.
It tells you a lot about my writer's ego. I like after they set up my account for the first week, I was afraid to check it, and then I just forgot about it. And in a Corona-driven fit of boredom, I remembered, hey, I make money off of that. I wonder if anybody ever actually bought a copy. And there was this a staggering sum greater than the zero I was expecting. And it was better than finding like a 20 in your pants right as you're doing laundry.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what else to do with it, but I realized Pride Month was getting ready to start, and I thought, well, let's give it to somebody, to some good folks who could use this, this money. So there you go, and thank you all for helping me do a good thing.
And it's not too late for the rest of you guys to jump in on this. We've got just a couple of days left. The link to Ghost Show Press Facebook page will be in the show notes for this episode. And you can follow that to get to where we need you to be. All right, so Star Trek Nemesis. This film comes out. Voyager is over.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that
very obviously.
Yeah, I could tell that Voyager was over because Janeway shows up and she's promoted. And I know, Chris, we'll get to your observation that maybe she should be in jail instead of the Admiralty. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that pretty soon. So how is Star Trek doing? Like, it's kind of staggering, right? After Insurrection.
The perfect verb to describe the early seasons of Enterprise.
Staggering?
Yes.
Yeah. So is Enterprise coming out at this point?
Yes. In fact, the fact that Enterprise had just started was the only thing that saved this from being a total reboot movie. Rick Berman was able to successfully argue for this being a next-gen movie simply because he said, it's just going to confuse the heck out of people if we hit the public with a brand new Enterprise cast and a brand new movie cast. So that sort of made this a late Echo Next Gen movie instead of something completely different, like the Romulan War movie they were talking about doing at one point.
Was there any chance of this film ever being a Starfleet Academy film? I know that idea has been bounced around a lot.
Not that popped up in my research. The only thing that I popped up as other alternative was the Romulan War movie, which in hindsight might have been a better move. Oh. And there's the long gestated movie about where they actually do make a movie with the will the fans set the seats on fire mentality, where you just kind of cherry pick from the various casts about who's got the biggest name and who can you afford. I call it like the Star Trek fantasy draft movie.
Yeah, interesting. But I know it takes 4 years for us to go from Insurrection to Nemesis. Jim, you want to pick us up from there?
Well, I'm going to lay a lot of blame on Mission Impossible 2.
Okay, so tell us what you mean by this. I saw this in the notes, and I was like, what?
Okay, so Mission Impossible 2, like the most famous story about that is how that is the movie that allowed Hugh Jackman to be Wolverine, right? In sort of like geek circles. Because the character actor that was playing Tom Cruise's opposite number was cast as Wolverine, and he couldn't make the filming because they went over time. So that's why Hugh Jackman was number 2 in that run.
Really?
Yeah. So, but that's the famous move. That's the famous thing about how Mission Impossible sort of changed for the better the X-Men franchise. Well, unfortunately for Star Trek, what happens is Stuart Baird, who is the editor of Superman the movie, so I can't throw too much shade at him, even though I'm going to throw some shade at him.
Yeah.
He still has that one glorious movie in his repertoire that I love.
Okay.
At this point, he's trying to get into directing. And Paramount comes to him and goes, we have this movie. It's a mess. We need you to edit it. And this movie is written by a script by Brandon Braga and Ron D. Moore, coming off the fame of False Contact.
Okay.
They didn't do Insurrection. They did Mission Impossible 2 instead.
Okay.
And so Paramount makes a deal with Stuart Baird. If you edit this movie and give us something that we can sell.
Yeah.
Because we don't know where this movie's going. It's got too many weird ideas and visual elements to it. Just make a coherent movie. We'll give you the next Star Trek movie.
Were they just hiring him to edit? They were hiring him to edit, and that was
because it was John Woo's directed film. That's the one with the motorcycle fighting sequence, and it's the one with the doves that fly for no reason. It's a fire.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so all right. Okay. So Mission Impossible 2 is this editorial wreck, and they hired Baird to fix it.
They hired Baird to fix it, and he would only agree to it if he got a movie to direct. And the next movie coming down the pipeline in development at that point was the next Star Trek movie.
I see.
And they figured that Rick Bowman would be the one who oversaw the movie, so it'd be fine. Like he wasn't going to ruin anything. The problem is Stuart Baird has no interest in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And the writer they get, John Logan, who's coming off of
Gladiator.
Was The Last Samurai before or after this movie?
Ooh,
it must have been after.
Okay.
But John Logan, who's coming off of, I think he did like the script for A Beautiful Mind, is coming into this picture. And he's a giant diehard Trekkie.
Chris, did you say Gladiator?
That's what's first thing popped in my head. Yeah, I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's right. He's coming off of Gladiator.
Well, that is because Gladiator is a film that was notoriously rewritten on set during shooting.
Yeah.
Like it was basically ad-libbed the whole movie. I remember what's his name? The lead, who's the
Russell Crowe.
Yeah, Russell Crowe saying, look, the main character's name was Narcissus. You can't have a movie in which the audience is supposed to identify with the Roman general whose name is fucking Narcissus.
Yeah.
What was the second choice? Was he going to be Biggest Dickus?
Apparently, yeah.
So, John Logan's good friends with Brent Spinell. So Brent Spinell brings him into the equation.
Okay.
And John Logan is like, he opens his first meeting with, I'm going to do a race that we were introduced in the original series but never saw, the Remans. And Rick Bowman's sitting there going, who the fuck are the Remans? And at that point, he breaks out his Balance of Terror tape, and he's like, this is the second planet of Romulus. I want to show these guys. And based on that hook, and the fact that he was willing to write multiple parts in for Brent Spinell is what got him the part.
Oh, God, help
He
us.
was able to cater to Spiner's ego.
That's why Spinell has a writing credit on this movie in terms of story.
I noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult that we get the Remans, the space vampires.
The unimaginative space vampires.
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it telling that, we're already in trouble, that here's somebody that has sat through those last few seasons of Next Gen where the two most lethal things in the universe are some combination of Data and the holodeck, or Data trying to kill you on the holodeck, or that skull-fuckingly unfunny comedy where Spiner isn't really just chewing scenery. He's just opening his mouth on one corner of the screen and devouring it whole. Just taking, to me, he is the throbbing root canal pain that just makes Generations and Insurrection just damn near unwatchable at points. Somebody sat through that and just said, you know what, I got a fever, and the only thing that's going to cure it is more data.
Well, so they write their script, right? They sit down and they write their script, and it caters to Spinal, and they have several meetings with Stewart, and Stewart's big into racing at this time. And so that's why the all those scenes in the movie. Yeah. And you can tell how excited he is when he's driving the car. Like this
reminds me of nothing so much as all the scenes with horses. In the God, it's it's so interesting. I mean, as a former academic, I used to talk about the means of production all damn day. Like the story of the plot, the story of the movie, what the movie is saying, is informed by the way it's made. And never has there been a more obvious illustration of that point than in these Star Trek movies, where the horses and the cars and everything shows up, not because it's telling a story, not because the people have something to say, but because Jean-Luc Picard likes to race cars.
No, Patrick Stewart likes to race cars.
Patrick Stewart likes to race cars.
At no point is Picard ever portrayed as any sort of like enthusiast for racing or Dolby off-roading. Like that's not a thing for him. Like he is established as being a horseback racer. Like he rides horses. That's from the original TNG show. So that the horses themselves are a little easier to swallow for me than the dune buggy.
So this is the movie where actually horses would have been okay.
Yeah.
If they transported down and brought horses with them, it would have made more sense than the dune buggy.
The dune buggy always stood out as odd. As soon as it came on, you think, what the hell is going on? Is it Mad Max now? It's just so crazy. It's just like even the shuttlecraft is like, why have you redesigned the shuttlecraft? You've got this weird shuttlecraft looking thing, and then you get this. Well, I mean, what do they use it for apart from this mission? What is it? It's like, it's a recreational vehicle. You get to fly around on planet every day. Yeah.
It reminded me of the films we're about to watch.
Yes, that's true.
Fast and Furious subtext to it, right?
Yeah.
The Star Trek movies we're about to watch, the Abrams films, are very much a product of that kind of fast and I'm not here to say bad shit about Fast and the Furious, which is kind of one of the most successful film franchises in movie history. I mean, that thing is 12 movies long, and they get better every time. But the anxiety, like, well, this is what fans want. Fans want to see guys driving around in cars at high velocity and shooting each other. So
if you're gonna make that movie, just fire everybody else. Have a movie where Pat McCormick and Paul Williams hire Picard and Data to drive a car full of Romulan ale from Arkansas to Atlanta in like 20 hours.
Now,
and put like 40 grand in Jackie Gleason on the trail.
I just want to say that I just wrote a 6-volume adventure path about space truckers, and that song is on my soundtrack for this
Nice.
That's box office gold, baby.
We've got to hit the neutral zone in 24 hours. Hit it. Yeah.
What's that in?
Sorry.
Jim, go ahead.
Okay, so since we're talking about the call, can we just acknowledge the fact that Picard breaks the Prime Directive?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a pre-industrial, this is like a proto-industrial civilization. They don't have warp drive.
That's
and he
true.
flies down there with the shuttlecraft that has transporter capability and goes to like 6 different locations in a dune buggy.
Yeah.
Gets to fly into the shuttle later and then fly up into space. So these people are screwed.
The fact that you got so I thought about that as I was watching it, and I thought, well, clearly there's nobody around. They must have sensors to say, okay, there's nobody around, so we can drive around out here and we're safe. And then suddenly, like, half a dozen dune buggies show up with people with machine guns, and it's completely unexplained. What the hell is going on? And like you say, and suddenly we're in a Mad Max movie, and I'm like, what?
So the script comes out, and Michael Dorn doesn't want to do it.
Okay.
Michael Dorn's like, my character is supposed to be a Klingon ambassador from Deep Space Nine. He's left Starfleet. There was no reason for him to be in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was finally the cajoling of Patrick Stewart, who was like, come on, you're part of the family. We want you in this movie, that he agrees to show up.
I see.
So, because Dorn was like adamant. And outside of the line where he acknowledges the honor of Romulans later in the film, there was no Wolf moment in this film.
You're right. Right. I understood that there are some deleted scenes in which he got some more lines that got cut, but
yeah. Proof positive, he gets one line in the corridor sequence before the Reichel fight.
That's interesting though too, because often I'd heard the opposite, that Dorn wanted to be in all of these movies, and so they had to find a way to shoehorn him in, because he didn't want to lose the opportunity to be in a TNG film just because he was now on DS9. But it sounds like the exact opposite happened. That he was kind of ready to put the character away.
Yeah, this was the reverse of that, because, like you said, there was no character reason for him to be on the ship.
Yeah,
there's no on-screen explanation.
As well, though, doesn't he? He gets the Romulan owl line at the wedding. I think that's literally it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Romulan line at the wedding. Yeah.
Nothing says I'm excited about doing this film more than showing up 50 pounds overweight.
Now, let's talk about the wedding scene, because when the film opens, because I have to say I liked it. I was thinking about these movies that we've watched over the last couple of weeks, and people have different feelings about them, and I still believe that every Star Trek movie is someone's favorite Star Trek movie. But in many ways, it occurred to me, if these three films have a story, that story is the story of Riker and Troy getting back together. And we see it happen in that little bar scene in First Contact, right? And then we get the whole insurrection, I'm young again bullshit.
Yeah.
And the in the bathtub. But then, and here they are getting married. And I am both delighted by that and yet saddened by the fact that they told that story in basically 6 scenes over 7 years, right? It's just kind of a shame. If we were going to tell that story, we should have made the movies incorporate that story. And I would have been much more interested in that story than the stories that we ended up actually getting many times.
Oh, yeah. A supercut of that would be better than any of them, with the possible exception of First Contact.
Yeah.
And much, much shorter. It would have been such a blessing.
All right, so...
Okay, so wedding scene, just as an aside.
Yeah.
I think last week we mentioned Wesley Crusher is at the wedding, which he is. He's top table. He sits there. No explanation. Has he got traveller powers? Has he not got traveller powers? He's just here for a vacation. He's a member of Starfleet anymore. Appears to be, because he's wearing a uniform. So that's that kind of thing. Then we get. Go, sorry.
Well, this is the thing which apparently there's been a lot of, as Star Trek fans are wont to do, a lot of post-show retconning, right? There's been a lot of no prizes awarded about Wesley Crusher's appearance in this film. Okay, so apparently there's a deleted scene, and we've all probably read but I haven't actually seen it. But where it's revealed that he's not a traveler. He's apparently rejoined Starfleet. But another version of it has that he, in the novels, I guess, is that he is still a traveler, and he shows up naked to the wedding, and Picard has to give him a uniform, so they just give him a uniform to give him something to wear.
So we also get Guinan as well.
Guinan's there? I didn't even know.
In my notes, is that Ro Laren beside Guinan? Because it looks like Ro Laren.
It is Michelle Forbes, but it's not Ro Laren.
What do you mean? How can it not be? How can it be? That's ridiculous. I'm afraid.
It doesn't have the ridges. It's the same. We have a Star Trek situation, people.
Before we leave Wesley behind, isn't this another great sign that we're in trouble? I mean, the people who made this film are going and here's your all-time favorite next-gen character, Wesley. I think for anybody that was there from fall of 87 onward has to be going, oh geez, we're so fucked. This would be like doing a movie about Kirk's wedding in the original series, and your special guest star be like, look, the space hippies are back.
Okay,
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you there on that one, Chris. I don't think Wesley is that bad.
See, and I'm afraid I'm with you as well. I actually put myself forward to do stats for Wesley in the actual role playing game, but he wasn't actually in the crew at the time, so we didn't get a chance to do it. But I would have been more than happy to stat Wesley Crusher up.
You know, I sold off every single bit of next gen merchandise, including my autographed first edition technical manual. The one piece of next gen lore that I kept is I have the "Shut Up Wesley" button that I got at RovaCon back in 1988. That is my enduring epitaph for the TV series.
I was running a bookstore in Las Vegas when Next Gen was coming out, and I had a coworker of mine whose name was Ryan, and he was a huge Star Trek fan and Next Gen fan, and he hated Wesley too. But as we worked together over time, he made me understand the point behind Wesley, and that he actually kind of loved the character at the same time that he hated him, because Wesley was the Gene Roddenberry me character. This was Ryan's argument, that he was designed to be the way for all of us watching the show to insert ourselves into it as that kind of, young teenage or adolescent person who gets the chance to be on the Star Trek, on the bridge of the Enterprise with all of their heroes. And also because Wesley was good at everything, that's part of of Star Trek's argument that the next generation, I don't mean not capitalized, but that the upcoming generation of people are always better than the ones that came before.
He is also he's kind of like the same as a Doctor Who companion. He's the guy you can have there to stand there and explain stuff to, but he's the normal guy that all the stuff's going on around him.
Yeah. And so, I never really had much point to him, but I understood that. I think it might be kind of an age difference or a generational difference. I think that
it's strictly a quality of the writing thing, because one of my all-time favorite Star Trek characters is Jake Sisko. Wesley could have very easily been Jake Sisko.
I see. Yeah, right. Okay.
Jake Sisko definitely had a kind of a driving force behind him, whereas Wesley seemed to float through a lot of stuff until he actually hit the academy.
Yeah, but I'm just saying if you're reading in the next gen fan bases, the fans are gonna love this. You've screwed the pooch before you've ever put piece of paper in your printer and printed this piece of shit out.
Now, one last thing about Wesley.
Yeah.
So the bow in this. Will Wheaton doesn't get a line of spoken dialogue in the theatrical cut. There is that deleted scene that you mentioned, and then there is the showing up naked because he thought it was the Betazoid wedding.
Right.
The last bit is Will Wheaton's voice we will hear in the 2009 Star Trek movie as a spoken line of dialogue on the bridge of the Romulan warship at the end of the movie.
What?
Yeah, Will Wheaton has a line of dialogue that he says, like something about like opening up the aft torpedo bays or some shit like that, some technical jargon, and that's Will Wheaton's voice. Swear to God.
Is it supposed to be Wesley Crusher?
No. It's just the people who were making that movie were more fans of Next Generation. Oh. Like at one point, Simon Pegg shouts out Captain Picard's name when he's talking to Cole. Like we'll talk about that in that film.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. All right.
There's a couple of Next Generation Easter eggs throughout that film.
So before we get into the Nemesis comes out and it bombed. Is that fair to say?
Oh, hard.
It says second to Made in Manhattan.
Reported 60 million budget, which in Hollywood terms usually means they spent 120 if you figure in the advertising, brings back 67 million.
Okay.
So
Made in Manhattan beats it.
Yeah. So I also read that they planned a sequel for this. Now,
story.
But if you look at the actual kind of, as you'll see the like story threads for the film, you see Riker gets the Titan, Data's dead. Had they already decided by the time it's finished that they weren't going to do a sequel, or was it going to be like, okay, well, if we do a sequel, it's going to be Enterprise A, and the Titan's going to show up, and we're going to bring back Data as in the Return of Spock? Was that what the plan was originally, or it just seems weird?
Now Aid, you're opening up the whole conversation about this, the kind of anxiety, especially in this film's final reel, about copying Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan, which we need to get to. But before we get to it, I want to talk about the Deanna Troi mind rape scene, which, quite frankly, kind of ruins this movie it ruins this movie for a lot of people watching it, and I think it's inexcusable. Jim, you feel real strongly about this? Do you want to start us off?
Yes and no. So when it comes to like, I can't watch this movie. This is the Star Trek movie that I've wrestled this past week with, in terms of like I watched the full 30 minutes of it, and I just can't bring myself to finish it. Star Trek: The Next Generation means a lot to me in terms of I was born in 1983. I was 4 years old when the encounter at Farpoint happened. I had all the Galoob action figures. I collected cereal boxes to get little stickers of Riker and all of them from season 1. Yeah. I've been a die-in-the-wool Next Generation fan my entire life. And they advertise this movie as the ending of the generation.
Yeah. And
one of the things that happens in this movie is one of the things I care about the most in Next Generation is the romance between Troy and Riker.
Yeah.
I think you've seen that when I talk about the two of them in those few scenes that we had, and it's the reason why I defend the existence of insurrection. Like, because we don't get the wedding without insurrection.
Right. Correct.
Now, in 2001, I am raped. I experienced a sexual assault.
Wow.
And I've had a lot of therapy to be able to say that, because I didn't say it. And a lot of it had to do with this movie in retrospect.
Wow.
Because they don't allow Deanna Troi to say that she was raped. Just that act of saying that out loud, I only got that because I had the strength of my wife to tell me, no, you were raped, and this is why. And the entire time I'd always call it the incident, or I'd cloak it in other language. I'd say like it's a violation.
Which is that's the
fact that this happens as a C plot.
Yeah.
And it's not addressed in terms of exploring the trauma done to Deanna Troi outside of giving her like she gets the power up to detect Shinzon on the ship, right?
Yeah.
Which they could have done in any number of ways if they wanted Deanna to do that, because they set it up with that line in the wedding as like Picard says, "You know too much about me." So why can't it just be like, "Oh, I can sense Shinzon because he's your clone." And the whole movie's themes all, am I my reflection or am I myself?
Yeah.
And instead we're given this rape sequence. We don't call it rape, we call it a violation.
Yeah.
And all it does is buttress a lame ass action sequence between Riker and Ron Perlman that I don't need.
When I watched the film, I mean, I found the sequence really offensive, but it didn't affect me, obviously, the same way that it affected you.
Yeah.
But as I was watching the film, I asked myself, why did this even happen? Like, what's the plot? What's the story reason for it?
Yeah.
And there isn't one. I mean, Shinzon had that sort of time where he hits on her when he sees her, but there's no, like, why is he doing this to her? It doesn't get him anything. He's got no reason to do it. And what's going on here is that there's a writer reason. We felt like we needed to do it so that we could explain why she can sense the ship at the end. But that, like you say, that's actually explained away. We didn't need the rape
You
scene.
could have done any number of things if you needed Troy in that position.
The real reason why this scene is written is that they can fridge Troy and motivate Riker in that ridiculous battle with Perlman, whose character doesn't even get a fucking name. Like they have to make us care about that fight. And instead of doing it in some way that makes us actually, care about the character and about the stakes, they instead rape Riker's fiance so that when he has a fight with him, we're all like, oh, like he's so motivated now because they hurt his girl. Mm-hmm. And that, if there is it's classic fridging, and it pissed me off.
But again, like you're saying, even the idea Deanna actually addresses that she doesn't even I don't believe she even informs Riker exactly what the situation was happening at the time anyway. So the idea Riker's even kind of motivated. It's not a physical thing, so we can't actually see something going on. It's all in her mind.
Yeah.
So everything's from her perspective. So like you say, it just seems even odder the way when it happens as well, because at that point in time, they're pretending to be getting along nicey, and then he just like, oh, I'll just pop my brain over to the Enterprise. You think, why the heck? What motivates you to do that at that point in time? It just seems so completely. Oh, we'll whack it in now so we can explain this later on. That's all it is. It's just literally, it's almost like a Chekhov's gun thing, and you put it in at a certain point in the beginning of the film, so later on when you go, right, that's it, and there's no other reason for it. And like Jim said, they could have easily got around it by just going, well, his brain waves are the same as Picard's brain waves. Okay, well, I can sense him, he's over there. That's it. They didn't have to do anything else with it.
And it helps the theme of the movie. The theme of this movie is, losing yourself in your reflection. Like, that's why B. Full's there. That's why Tom Hardy, the clone of Captain Picard, is there. And it's not addressed in the resolution. Instead, we get this false moment of rape. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Chris.
No. It's totally fine, man. You can't see it, but I'm sending you a virtual fist bump through the microphone. Much love to you, buddy. We're just getting to know each other through this podcast, but God, I'm so sorry. Much love and strength to you, my friend. I really respect your the courage that you've shown in dealing with this. That really,
Well, I know that we do have some viewers, we do have some listeners, and people are in different stages. And we're all going through a traumatic time. And like, I got my Captain Picard action figure because like one of the lessons that I've always embodied is false duty's personal truth. Like, a Starfleet officer is to the truth. And I actually listened to that scene before I came onto the podcast, so I can be like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it in the public forum so that other people can express their trauma and reach out to the people who care about them, because I could only have done this because of my wife in that other room. Like, I have articulated it and I shut it down. And Nemesis for me feels like the end of my childhood in the sense of it comes out a year later, and I was really looking forward for some escapism, something to help me cope, because I've always taken solace in Picard and company. And then this happens, and I just remember I stopped reading the novels after this. And I used to, I was day and date, like the guy at the bookshop near me knew that if there was a Next Generation novel, I was there to buy it, that day. And I would read it 2 days later. And I just stopped being engaged with Star Trek for a long time after this. And I didn't know why until this week, when I sat and I was watching and I was feeling these emotions that I couldn't comprehend. And I just had to do the thing of self-care, and I had to shut the movie off.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep rubbing the salt of this movie onto wounds, but but there is something that a media connection I made while watching this incredibly unnecessary and unpleasant scene. This is within shouting distance of the time that DC Comics does their big Identity Crisis crossover, which of course is infamous for bringing back the sweet, adorable, wacky couple, a sweet married couple of Ralph and Sue Dibney, the elongated man, just so we can talk about the time that Sue was brutally raped all those years ago, and they just never told us about it. And I kept thinking about the time that right after that series came out, at the time, the very famous blogger Valerie DeRazio, who had worked at DC, and one of her stories about working at DC. And okay, to be fair, we've only got her word on it, but oh my God, it's one that I can give a great deal of credibility for.
Yeah.
Apparently, the publisher at the time, Dan Didio, he was pushing for that to be included because he said, we have to show how grown up DC Comics are now. And according to Valerie DeRazzo, he was running around the office yelling when the art came in, going, "The rape pages are here! The rape pages are here!" And it just seemed like there was this really unfortunate, horrible time in media where everybody had to show how grown up they were, and that was supposedly one of the ways of doing it. And wow, I mean, I guess maybe one thing we can take solace in is it's only been like 15 years, but we human beings have said no, thank you, no, I'm good. No more of that. No more of that.
To that point, Chris.
Yeah.
Studios are still doing that. Like Game of Thrones, Sansa Stark's motivation is that she's raped by Ramsay Bolton.
Oh God.
That's what ultimately achieves her badassery, is that she's now a victim. So it's still happening, but we actually now have language thanks to Gail Simone giving us the World Fridge based on the old Green Lantern story. Now we have language to talk about this that we didn't have in 2002.
Yeah.
Like the idea of being triggered by something, that wasn't a word that we use.
Yeah.
But now we can express that and be like, okay, this is upsetting me in a way that is unwarranted.
Yeah. All right.
So went down.
No. So it's kind of hard to even talk about a lot of the rest of this movie because of the huge elephant in the room that is that scene. But we already.
I can throw in my Ricardo Montalban story anytime you want.
Well, I kind of get to that because we've already mentioned it. This film seems to have a kind of weird obsession with trying to duplicate the success of Star Trek II. And I knew that going in, but I was looking for it. I didn't really see it until right near the end. Like the fight in the nebula and Data's self-sacrifice and all of that. That really felt like the rest of the film doesn't feel like Star Trek II. The dinner scene, all that stuff, the ridiculous car driving, like all that bullshit. None of that feels like Star Trek II. But the end, the climactic scene really does. Chris?
Well, it's got one other, I think it's got two other very important structural differences from Star Trek II.
Yeah.
First of all, Star Trek, Star Trek. I think we got into this a little bit last time about how there are Star Trek movies that will bring in a villain that's automatically over. You don't have to spend a good chunk of the movie explaining, why Khan matters or why it's the Klingons. Yeah. And Star Trek films seem to have a definite problem whenever they try to bring in a brand new villain that they do an incredibly poor because they have a track record of doing an incredibly poor job of getting them over. Yeah. And one of the things that struck me about this film is, it's like they want to bring in Picard's clone as like a neat villain, like you automatically knows why he matters. Oh, by the way, talk about ripping off Wrath of Khan. Through several drafts, that was Picard's long lost son.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
I forgot about that.
That seems a tad familiar.
Yeah, sure.
But it's almost like they want to give us a villain that will automatically get over, that we automatically have a reason to care about it. And it seems like this movie is like 12 hours long, and at least 6 hours of it is Shinzon's backstory. Yeah. And as a guy, and I have to admit, as a guy that's been saying for years, man, wouldn't it be great to learn more about Romulan culture? This just seems like apparently I was holding a monkey's paw while saying that one time. Holy shit!
We got some cool bits in we got some cool bits in the Picard show.
Like Shinzon himself is just an odd character. Even just the idea. I mean, I'm not just in the idea of what we've seen in the Romulans in the past. So we bring back the Remans, which are apparently, like I say, they got name check, nothing else. So now we know they're the indigenous race of Remus because they don't appear to be Vulcan proto offshoots like the Romulans apparently were. So because they've got completely different physiology. So apparently they're there. So effectively the Romulans came in and subjugated the entire planet, right?
Yeah.
So then they come along and they think, right, what do we need to do to beat them pesky Federation guys? I know. We'll clone a captain apparently on the Stargazer at the time or somewhere before the Enterprise. He's the guy we'll have because we can pop him into the Federation and he'll cause all kinds of trouble in the future. That doesn't make any sense. The timing doesn't make any sense. If he was brought in to if he was vat grown, they said, "Oh, you can age in 30 years." Why didn't they say he came into existence last year? Because at least it would give some idea that Picard was a worthy target. Even after the Borg had simulated him, at least you can say, right, that's the guy we want to have. He's famous. So that doesn't make any sense. The second part that doesn't make any sense is you have this subjugated race that is effectively, you're the guys that work in our mines. Yeah. We use you as shock troopers to fight our wars against the Dominion. But then we also give you big kick-ass ships that can fly around in space as well and make you commanders. That makes no sense either.
I can explain that. I can explain the cloning.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. The Tal Shiar agent goes to the clone guy, and Romulans probably still use money. He's probably on a budget. So he came there to make a deal for Captain Kirk DNA. The price was way out of his range. He tried to make like a backup deal for some Cisco DNA, and then he finally says, "You got anything on special?" The guy says, "Well, I got something from this dude on the Stargazer," and just like Igor grabbing the wrong brain in Frankenstein, he goes back with what he can afford. with what he can find.
And the Romulans in this, obviously, now we've seen more Romulans in Picard. We've seen a lot more Romulan stuff going on. These seem to go back to that same kind of Romulan Next Generation stuff with the square shoulders, the little kind of square. Yeah. So we haven't kind of refined everything. But like you just mentioned, Tal Shiar. No mention of Tal Shiar. Nothing like that. The idea this would be a Tal Shiar plot would make some sense. We've seen Next Generation references to the Tal Shiar lots and lots of times. No mention at all. They all just seem to be going along. Hey, this crazy clone guy we chucked in the bin 7 years ago. He's the guy we're going to be following for the next idea. We're going to take over the Federation. It's just lunacy, utter lunacy.
It's almost as if the director had no familiarity with Star Trek.
It's almost as if they had no clue. Exactly. Yeah.
But Tom Hardy is such a great actor.
And you want me to tell you the Tom Hardy story?
Tell us the Tom Hardy story.
Okay, so at the point when they finished the script, they got the shooting script. They're trying to find an actor to play Shinzon.
Okay.
So they send out specific pages to people. And Tom Hardy sees the pages and says, this is shit. So he gets the whole script. He gets the whole script and he mails in a tape of pages that weren't supposed to be seen. Like he had someone smuggle it out of Paramount. And because of the audacity that he had and the gumption that he had to pull, stealing a script copy and doing his own take, they gave him the part.
Really?
Yep.
That's interesting. Well,
I think it's actually the dinner sequence.
Okay, so let's talk about the dinner sequence. Last week, when I asked the assembled wisdom of our hallowed halls, what is there to like about this movie? Jim, you said the dinner scene makes the rest of the movie worthwhile, and you wish that the before and after the dinner scene would be as equally good. Tell us how you walk us through that scene, Tom.
So Star Trek's about a lot of things. Like Star Trek's like this giant blender that we keep, like every generation tosses in their own interpretation.
Yeah, but it's mythology in that way, the same way that every culture that encounters King Arthur has to invent their own greatest knight and add him onto the round table until we get Prince Valiant, who's like basically he's America, except greatest knight in Camelot. It's the same way with Star Trek. Every generation kind of adds their own favorite bits to it. Yeah.
But there's still some truisms. Like you can watch an episode that's called Star Trek, and there's still some like basic tenets. And I don't mean like set dressing and uniforms and badges and transporters. I mean like big issues like self-discovery.
Yeah.
Like what does it mean to be human?
Yeah.
And this scene sort of explores that because it's really about a man with no past outside of this convoluted, like I was taken in and helped by Ron Perlman in the mines.
Yeah.
I would have died.
And we're going to call him Perlman throughout because he doesn't have a name. So we're calling him Perlman.
Yeah. Well, in the script, he's called the Viceroy, but he's Ron Perlman.
Yeah, yeah.
I just called him Travis.
Travis. Okay.
Hit canon accepted. All right. So outside of Travis helping pull things on, he asked, like, all the Bacons have the Bacons always been warriors because he's a warrior, so therefore they must be warriors. And Bacon's like, no, I think of myself more as an explorer. And he's like, have the Bacons always been explorers?
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm really the first one to do that. And just the discussion and the optimism between these two characters that are trying to figure out who they are in relation to each other, what that means, and also what it means for the galactic peace. Because the scene ends with that downward shot on the Romulan Senate floor with the map of the galaxy surrounding Patrick Stewart. Right. And he makes the comment of, this is quite a thing. Who would imagine a Starfleet captain having dinner with the Praetor of Romulus 100 years ago? Like he has that speech, and that scene is so well done because it's sort of like the potential of, if this was not a movie, this is the hook for your TV show. Yeah. Like this building a bridge with Romulus could be the next us trying to get Bajor back and like get Bajor on its feet and join the Federation. Like this is like a classic crux. And then all of a sudden we get the Deanna sequence, we get the violation, we get the rape, And then we get shenanigans where he needs his blood to survive because he's aging quickly.
Yeah.
And he has to, the whisper has to speak louder than the voice, or whatever that line is in the ready room. And all the goodwill that this scene builds up, like that ready room scene, just takes away.
Chris?
Oh, nothing. I just that line is just such what the fuck to me. Like what? that's no time is the fire in which we burn. It just really like what?
It does feel like a command save moment. Like that's when the scriptwriter took a break. He's like, yeah, that's a good line.
I mean, even that bit in the ready room where he's sitting in there in his hologram, and he just basically says, "Don't bother searching for the holograph emitters." And you go, "Yeah, because you could have gotten them into that room. There's no possible way you could have done it." It's bullshit again. You could say if theoretically they've got an EMH now, if they were the holo emitters for the EMH, they could say, "No, yeah, we've got control of your holo emitters." That would at least make some sense. Yeah. But no, apparently no. Anyway,
when I was watching the dinner scene. And I was struck by a few things by it. First, I love Picard's, like, I really want to believe you, Shinzon. Like that desire to believe that Shinzon really wants peace, that he's really this, this kind of optimistic guy trying to fight. And Hardy sells it, because when he says, like, when Picard says, how many people had to die, for your revolution? And Shinzon looks guilty for a minute. He's like, too many, but right, like that felt sincere to me. Like if it was effective. But what I really wanted out of this scene was to pick up the plot from Generations, because the plot for Picard and Generations is that he is the last of his family. And so suddenly the weight of the Picard legacy is now on him again. And I wanted to see that come back, so that maybe Picard has a moment where he says, I used to think all of my family was dead, and now here you are. And you're me, you're you, and you're the praetor of Romulus. And maybe the feeling like I had to carry the weight of the family, maybe I can not have to do that again. And it would provide some temptation for Picard to want to believe Shinzon, because he wants Shinzon's story to be real, because it would absolve him, Picard, personally, of this responsibility he's always fled from and never wanted.
And the idea also,
you know what your problem is, Jason?
What's that?
You're browsing Star Trek movie Tinder, and you're looking for somebody to go to the amphitheater and see all's well that ends well, but you pick the Star Trek movie that wants to go to the NASCAR race.
I know. You're right. That being said, the one of the things that I did like about this film is the fact that Shinzon's motivation is this weird existential crisis. Now, the lines about the whisper is louder than the voice and all that bullshit, you're right. Those are flat. Like, they lie there on a table and writhe. But the idea that Shinzon knows that he's a clone, and so his motivation is to create his own identity. And the way to do that is to be as different from the guy he's cloned as possible. I kind of dig that as a motivation. I just wish that it was executed better in the film.
If this would have really been a next-gen story, that Picard would have totally talked Shinzon into turning good and embracing his humanity and coming up with a much more budget-friendly solution to this whole thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, but getting back to what I was saying earlier, this is the Star Trek that wants to show you how grown up it is. We're gonna kill the bad guy this time because we're all grown up.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's like Shinzon's got the genetic flaw, which is obviously theoretically something the Federation could help him with, theoretically. So so Picard reaching out to say, yeah, we can help you out would make some kind of sense. The idea that Picard would actually like to see a Picard, hopefully bring peace between the Romulans and the humans, because if he's there as Praetor and he's actually the official Praetor and he can do that, that makes some sense. That's not worried about. They don't just knock the crap out of each other for a while. That'd be right.
But he basically walks in the room and like, so sorry, we're not ripping off Star Trek 6 with this one. We're ripping off Star Trek 2.
All right, so let's talk about the end because, we haven't really.
Before we do that, can we talk about B4?
Yeah, I was going to say.
B4, yes.
So I'm watching this movie, and I'm like, okay, so the first thing that becomes very clear is that they're inserting another character for Brett Spiner to play.
Oh, God.
Off the one he's been playing, and he can survive in the other character. So it's immediately telegraphed. But where the fuck is B4 from? Like, the Romulans somehow got him, and Shinzon plants him on this planet so that he can lure the Enterprise close to the neutral zone, so that when the Romulans say we want to meet with the Federation captain, the Enterprise is the nearest ship. At least they didn't say you're the only ship in the sector again. But so I get why from a plot purpose it's happening, but they never explain where the hell B4 comes from or how the Romulans got him.
But you see that's one of the many data related flaws to Next Gen. By season 7 of Next Gen, it's pretty clear that if you reach down far enough in the back of your couch, you're either going to pull out another data model android or some other Noonien Sung relative. Yeah. Apparently, they're just fucking everywhere.
The family.
They're okay. Like there are more data and Sung relatives in the Next Gen universe than there are Starbucks in the United States of America right now.
But also, like I mentioned in the notes, again, we're going to naming conventions. This is the prototype. It's called B4. It's like what? Because you're going to succeed and make another one. This just
originally it was his name was supposed to be B9, and anyone who watches Lost in Space knows B9 is the robot from that show.
Well, B9 would make more sense.
Yeah, but they couldn't do that.
They couldn't
copyright.
Right.
Man, it's B4.
So. Also, the fact, again, I believe, as I've been looking at this up as well, because, again, I've not seen this film for donkey's years, so I was going through it all, figuring it out. They're saying that one group is saying that, according to the film, eventually he is a Soon android. They pick him up, they dump him on the planet to lay the breadcrumbs, as it were. And another one seems to suggest that he's a Romulan creation, that they managed to copy Data and Picard at some point, and that's where they got the DNA from. But how the hell did the Romulans come up with a positronic android again? And if you go to Picard, they would not go near anything positronic straight away. So that puts that to bed. And the second thing about the idea that they can scan a positronic signal from way off in the distance and find the planet. Surely the planet of the androids in Picard should just be like, oh my God, there's thousands of them down there. We can just put them. It's like a little mosaic going on of positronic things. So they should be able to pick that out of no problem at all. So
I just want to note that I've been on this podcast for 51 minutes before I found out I recognized the joke in B9. It took me this long to get the pun. B9.
But that makes sense because again, that would be a Soon type thing to do. Call him B9 because he's going to be helpful to people. He's going to make some sense. But the idea is like, we'll call him B4 because there's bound to be another one. What?
If we're at the 51 minute of this podcast, we really have to note about how director Stuart Baer worked his way onto the Mount Rushmore of the foremost hated people in Star Trek history.
Now, I read this story, but please tell us. Yeah.
Okay. It's so funny. I mean, they're going back and reading these retrospective interviews. There are people that will painfully try to be nice. Ron Moore does not want to hate Patrick Stewart for rewriting the First Contact script. Yeah. And nobody wants to be too open in how much they hate Brandon Braga for crashing 2 Star Trek series at the ground. But just the open, intense hatred, the people that will openly tell you from that cast, like Marina Sirtis, who will basically tell you that if they're backing up their SUV and they see Stuart Baer behind them, they'll hit the gas. and really, and the stuff and the stories they tell about him, if half of them are true, I totally see why. It's like apparently he spent the entire production calling LeVar Burton Laverne, no matter how many times he was corrected.
And Geordi is an alien because of the eye.
God.
That is like LeVar Burton tells the story about how he kept calling him an alien and didn't understand why he was being so human, because obviously he's an alien because he got those eyeballs.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just you realize how it makes you appreciate how many good Star Trek films we have, because they were willing to bring in directors who had some writing experience.
Yeah.
The adjustments that Nicholas Meyer was able to do before and during production, or Leonard Nimoy's attachment to the material and his closeness to it. And wow, I mean, it's so funny that they were trying so hard to do Star Trek 2.
Yeah.
But like everything that worked back in the early 80s just completely blew up in their faces. Bringing in outside people just completely and utterly ruined. Well, I think maybe the key thing may be just the talent differential between Stuart Baird and Nicholas Meyer, and the fact that the original Star Trek 2 was such a humble. We'll let you make this for like here you go, here's $10, go make a Star Trek movie.
Right.
Compared to like the giant ego fuck for Patrick Stewart and Brent Spiner that this movie is. And I guess there's something to be said from coming from a more humble place.
Star Trek 2, I think, is definitely the exception that proves the rule. The idea you get someone on that's got no idea about the actual stuff going on, and you go, just write something spacey, that'll be fine. You go, okay, fair enough. And then they make Star Trek 2, and you go, crikey, you pulled it off, well done, fantastic. And they go, okay, that guy's done it. Get some other people to do it as well, and you just get and it's
well, I mean, in a way, this movie is the worst of both worlds. I mean, you have John Logan, who apparently is just this Brent Spiner starfucker, who's just like, whatever you say, Brent. Hey, how about 3 roles for you in the next movie? And a guy who just could not give 2 fucks in hell for the entire Star Trek franchise, and you hand him the keys to the starship.
Yeah.
Oh, this just seems so ill-conceived from the start. I will admit, of all the films that I want to hit it until I make it good, this is the film that I wanted to be good, because as ultimately unsatisfying as I find Next Generation, I wanted him to get a nice finale. I wanted him to go out on a high note, say thank you for the 7 episodes I might need to revisit sometime in my life. This obviously means a lot to you. You kept the franchise going. You guys deserve to go out on a high note. And wow, they didn't get it at all.
We got kind of lucky with Meyer, right? Because was it Meyer that came up with the Horatio Hornblower in space bit for Wrath of Khan? That was
the line that got him the job.
Yeah,
because he said that without realizing that was basically Roddenberry. Well, word for word, one of Roddenberry's original takes on the show.
And what's interesting is that we talked about a previous episode, I think just last week, right? Jim, where you were saying like it's kind of impossible to make a Star Trek movie that's good, because we always want to compare it to, because it's never the same as a television show, and it was kind of imagined and conceived as a television show, and moving it to the big screen makes it breaks all the rules. But Wrath of Khan works because it's so different from the television show, and it's well executed. And although Roddenberry calls it Horatio Hornblower in space, quite frankly, I don't think we really see that. And I'm talking about a guy I've read those novels, and it's not really like that, to me at least. But the film Star Trek 2 does feel like that. It has a lot of the trappings of a Horatio Hornblower, all the way down to the guy who blows a whistle when a commanding officer comes on deck, and it feels like a kind of English Napoleonic warship kind of in space.
Well, you get the thing that makes this show worth talking about, all these years down the line.
Yeah.
It's a tremendously human story. It has a point of view that you can either agree or disagree with, and it takes a bold choice that not a whole lot of other media would support. And it also remembers that, at some point something's got to blow up. But it remembers that more than something blowing up, you have to give 2 shits about what's blowing up before you go there.
Exactly right. Yes, you have to have some investment in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And that's why, like, so that leads us back to the beginning of our conversation and the whole issue about Perlman's character, the Viceroy, that we don't care about him enough. He doesn't even have a name. They could have done all these things to make us care about that character. But instead,
it seems so odd because this film really wants you to understand Shinzon.
Yeah.
I mean, they really want you to understand everything from his point of view, and it's like he just dominates the film, and I appreciate that they're trying to address the fact that we want to give you a reason to care about this villain, but God, it just it seems like it could have lost a page or 20.
Well, so finally, ultimately, we get the final battle in a nebula.
Oh God!
Yeah, exactly. In which the ship is saved, and I want to note, though, by the way, the special effects and action scenes are noticeably better than almost every other movie in the series. Like when I was watching the action scenes in the Starship combat, and when the Enterprise rams the Scimitar. This is another example of the technical aspects of the film being better than the creative aspects of the film, right? Like, the people that wrote it really let down the technical people behind the camera who made this film, who made the quality of the production quality of the movie much better than the script. But then we have the ridiculous scene with Data saving the ship and dying and all that stuff. And do we have thoughts or opinions on how this movie ends?
I'm sorry. I was going to say, nebula color choice. Don't forget we went with the green nebula this time rather than an orange nebula. So they changed the color palettes. That's nice.
Yeah. It has to be green.
So it's again we've got a problem with. We still have to have a fist fight at the end of the actual movie. There's always got to be a fist fight. Most of these ones either break down to either Riker kicking the crap out of someone or Picard kicking the crap out of someone.
Right.
That seems to be the general standard thing at the moment. So we've got Riker doing this thing while Picard's doing this other thing. Now, I know Jim has mentioned in the notes about the Romulan Admiral turning up with her two ships. And she should be given some credit for, like, hey, we're not going to eliminate the entire human race. We're going to, we don't want to be seen as the ultimate bad guy. So we've got to stop this thing now.
Yeah.
So that makes some kind of sense.
Yeah.
The problem I had with it is I don't know why they didn't use more familiar Romulan ships, because we've got those really lovely warbirds that we see in Next Generation, the big green ships, and we get these weird things which look really, really kind of really wingy.
Yeah.
But another one weird thing is, like I said about the idea of this finality going on. It's like, are we going to write the Enterprise off as well? Again, do we have to ditch the E before the end of the movie as well? So by smashing into the front of the other ship?
They want to do F. It's a big transformer.
Yeah,
box
it's
office.
just
box office.
But it doesn't even seem to come off too bad out of it either. That's what's so strange. When it kind of pulls away, it's like, well, you're not even missing your saucer section. So it's just like, yeah. But
we see a lot of the evidence space dock at the end of the film being rebuilt.
Yeah, but there's some good stuff. I mean, the idea that you see more actual kind of the ideas of having all the dorsal phasers firing in different directions and actually getting some hits without actually having to sense lock and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on. Like you say, that we don't. People, I think by now have got the idea of space being 3D, so we can't default to the hey, it doesn't speak in 3D. It's like you say, yeah, but yeah, it's okay. It's not too bad.
Yeah, I think maybe its biggest problem is it wants to be Star Trek 2 and 3. It wants to hit us with the big character death, but with the whole B4 thing, it's just too in our face that this is going to mean less than a comic book character dying.
Yeah.
For years I've been saying, the thing that could have redeemed a good chunk of this movie is just kill Data and deal with the fact that he's dead and he's not coming back. And one of the reasons, not to get off on a whole other podcast, but part of the reason that I like Picard was it was one of the very few times that Next Gen made the brave choice. You die and you don't come back.
Yeah.
At least, doing grown up stuff like that. That's why I prefer TOS to TNG. And that's why I think Wrath of Khan drinks Nemesis milkshake.
Well,
it's got more it's a more grown up story, which is immediately undercut by Star Trek 3, but that's again another podcast.
Let's compare for a minute Data's death in Picard to this. And if you think back to the last episode of Picard, 2 people die in that episode, right? There's Picard and Data. And Picard comes back and Data doesn't, right? Like that's what's going on here. And that contrast, the fact that there's 2 people's lives at stake, but there's only one replacement body. And so only one of them is going to get to come back. And we have to decide who it's going to be. And it's not just, and it's Picard, not just because his name is on the show, but because, like you said, because it's the braver choice. But then we get this film where we have 2 people's lives at stake. And so if Picard lives, Data should die, right? But he doesn't. They both live. It's the classic.
Yeah.
You see this in a lot of superhero movies have these scenes where the hero's choice scene, right? Where the Green Goblin is holding Mary Jane in one hand and a train car in the other, right? Or the Joker says, I've got your girlfriend in one building and I've got the DA in another, right? Like every superhero movie does this now. It's as ubiquitous as the suit up scene. And every time you see it, the director or the writer tries to find some way to cheat the answer.
Yes.
So that the character can somehow say both, right? And so even Batman's like, well, screw the Joker. I'm going to save my girlfriend. But the Joker knows the rules of being a superhero better than Batman does.
Yep.
He swaps it around, right? But but in this film, both Picard and Data have these moments of at the spinal crisis, and one of them should live and one of them should die.
Yes.
And Data's death, okay, Data died, but the whole B4 plot of the whole movie tells us already, they telegraph it, that he's not going to be dead.
Except they don't actually follow up on it. By the time we get to Picard, he's in a box.
Thank God.
That's it. There's no data. So it's not even though they even follow up on it. It's even. I mean, like we mentioned when we were watching Picard, the comic books originally suggested that Data is on the ships, and I believe even before the Abraham movies, there's some mention of Data being around with it as well. Obviously, and that's obviously because everyone assumed it. Oh well, Data's coming back as B4, and then they go, no, we're not doing that. Because I think that would have ruined Picard. I think the idea of like bringing back the idea of having Picard Data dying or Picard dying at the end of Picard, and by the way, the guy we killed off in the movies, we're bringing him back on episode 2 straight away. It was kind of like undercut it completely. So that would make some sense for that.
You know, when I was a child in the 70s, even then I was hip to the fact that there are 2 kinds of people in the world. There's a group of people that are heading to one theater so they can clap their hands until Tinkerbell comes back from the dead. And then there are people like me that are in Godfather 2 watching Michael Corleone and have his own brother Fredo taken down to the boathouse. And, you know, I think that's the fundamental failure of this movie. It should have been a Fredo going to the boathouse movie, and instead it's a clap your hands. If you clap your hands hard enough, Data will come back to life. And maybe there'll be 8 of them in the next movie.
Jim, final thoughts?
So much to unpack. When it comes to Data's death sequence, the only thing that sells it for me is that LeVar Burton, and I really think he's like the heart and soul of these films. Like he's given so little to do, but he has a look. Like right before he hits the button to release Data, and they don't have lines of dialogue, but they exchange meaningful glances. And if you watch the show, you acknowledge that this is Data going to die. And he knows that, and Data knows that, and he's still willing to do it. And there was none of that quibbling or don't do it, Data, I have to do it. There was none of that. It's just this little human moment in this whole mess that doesn't give me an emotion.
Yeah.
It was like a little spark of like, okay, the actors are really doing their best with this material, and LeVar Burton is not just going to suit up and collect a paycheck. And that moment for me carries more weight. Now, we keep referencing Star Trek 2 because it's so blatantly obvious that 2 is the linchpin of Act 3. But this entire movie is just copying moments from the other Star Trek movies.
Okay.
Picard's line of Captain's prerogative, taking the Argo out. That calls back to Picard and Captain Kirk. I thought you were going to go for the launcher. No, Captain's prerogative. Okay. Like, or the fact that Riker's fight scene happens on a bridge that's falling.
Yeah,
like it's supposed to, again, harken back to Generation. Like all these like little end moments that if you've watched any of these films, it doesn't have an identity of itself.
It's like a pastiche of all the other films.
Yeah, it doesn't actually have, and because it loses itself in its references, there's no grand statement. So when Data sacrifices himself and blows up the ship, there's nothing to it. Like it takes the Picard show replaying Bing Crosby's song, and that's the reason why it's Blue Skies, is because it's a shout out to Denise Crosby, his granddaughter.
Yes, right.
Like that's the little in joke, and it takes them opening that show with that song, I think closing Data's death with that song, that sort of buttresses this movie as being something that may matter to the franchise as a whole.
So what you're saying is that Picard makes Nemesis a better movie.
I think in retrospect it does, because it does some of the emotional lifting that Nemesis doesn't care about because they want to give you Picard in a dune buggy.
Yeah. Well, on that note, gang,
I hope you can hear me applauding. Jim just stuck a fork in that one. Jim just stuck a big old fork in that one.
We are going to come back next week with the first of 3. Now, I want to warn everybody right now, like all of my friends on the podcast, everybody I'm with here, Chris, Abe, Jim, they were all like, Jason, we don't actually have to do all the J.J. Abrams movies. We can just do all of them at once, or we can just not do them at all. And, maybe it would be better for our mental health if we aren't just screaming, fuck, for 3 weeks. But I was like, no, like we walked through every single one of these movies. I want to do the whole series. I started this with a set of rules. I want to finish it with a set of rules. And I want to give these movies a fair shake. I haven't watched them in years. And for a lot, and ultimately, this is the thing. Whether we like it or not, for a whole generation of American audiences, this is Star Trek. The J.J. Abrams movies are Star Trek, and it's tragic. It's like when I hear people describing Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice as their Superman, and I'm like, you poor besotted soul. But this is Star Trek for a generation, and I feel like I have to at least give it a shot. I have to try to approach it on its own terms and see if there's, what is it trying to say, and grapple with it.
Well, the nice thing about those new fans, because there's quite a few of them, that they have gone back to the other Star Treks, like really, we'll old gold. Like I've just proven my bona fides with Next Generation. Like we'll old gold, and so we're a little bit more reluctant to love again, right? Off-putting thing. But because there's only 3 of these films, and they're like, I really like this thing called Star Trek. Where can I get more of it? They have been going retroactively back to enjoying Trek. So if anything brings you to Star Trek and you get to enjoy the whole wonderful thing that has been so important to my life, I'm all for. I kind of like the Abrams movies to an extent.
Yeah. Well, so
I'm going to becoming the apologist to Chris's manic laughter in the background.
Well, my hunch is that we'll all find a little something, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Your hunch would be wrong.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. I knew I could count on you.
Thank you. I have my Montalban story queued up if you want to go out with that.
Okay, hit us for the Montalban story, and then we'll hit the big red button.
Okay, one more thing as well after Chris's story.
Okay.
No, go ahead, do your story.
Okay, my stuff is very, very short. Okay. Apparently, last week, which I forgot to mention, it was the 30th anniversary of Best of Both Worlds. Okay.
Wow.
Now, apparently, this is the episode that effectively saved Next Generation, because it was the first episode where everyone goes, oh my God, there's a cliffhanger, and it actually means something. So people were queuing up to wait for season 4, where they're going, what the hell's going to happen with Picard? And I just thought that episode blew
my mind. Like like when I saw that happen, I was like, holy shit, and I couldn't wait for the next season. Yeah.
Well, after that episode aired, after the original, the part 1 aired, Patrick Stewart's sitting at a red light in LA. He's got the windows down because it's summertime. It's hot. He's sweating. And someone pulls up beside him, and a mom, like this middle-aged housewife, shouts, "You ruined my summer!" What's going to happen? And Patrick Stewart's like, I don't know. I don't write it.
I'm sorry. Chris?
You know, the same con I got with the Wesley button. They handed out like you can take 2d6 and generate every single episode of Next Gen. And the thing I remember best about that chart was if you got a 12, the result was Roddenberry's taking a nap. You can actually do an episode where the ship fires its phasers. So within my circle of Star Trek watching friends, our running gag about Best of Both Worlds was they rolled a 12.
Nice. All right, tell us
that was like our shorthand for that. All right, Montalban story. Okay, one of the greatest people I've had a chance to meet in the tabletop game industry is Mike Benninghoff, who runs Avalanche Press, the Cadillac of tabletop war games. Okay. Mike teaches history at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, and as such, frequently gets called to consult on games that have historical nature, historical war games and such. And he was telling me that one time he was flying back from California where a very, very generous video game company had flown him and like 3 of his history department buddies all the way to California, put them up in a nice hotel, all kinds of perks and things like that so they can consult on a video game. And like all flyers, they had a long layover in Atlanta. And like, you can't blame any adult airline passenger. They went to the airport bar and, the company was picking up, the computer company was picking up the tab. So they imbibed generously, Mike's friends more so than he. Okay. So they're feeling good when all of a sudden Ricardo Montalban walks into the airport bar.
Wow.
And it's immediately Ricardo Montalban. He's got the style, the gravitas. It just everybody in the room stops and looks at him because everybody goes, "Oh, it's Ricardo Montalban. Could not be anybody else." Well, apparently, one of the last people to notice this was one of Mike's more sloshed friends.
Yes.
So when he kind of picks his head up on the table and spots him, his reaction is to point and at the top of his lungs go, "Con!" But the beauty thing about it is, by the time this is happening, Montalban has strolled up to the bar. He's ordered a glass of white wine, and without missing a beat, turns around with the glass of white wine, raises it to Mike's drunken friend and goes, "Ah, Kirk, my old friend."
All right, gang. Join us next week for Star Trek 2009. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
You can hear the sneer quotes.